this program to bring you a special report.
Welcome back to South of the Eight. With me today is Joey Reyes from Reyes Rarities. I'm sure you recognize him from a couple episodes ago. We actually liked our episode so much that we're going to be starting a segment together. We're going to be talking about American imperialism or anti-imperialism, really, class consciousness, and a lot of other stuff like that. Yeah, we're super excited. I hope you guys like the clips. I know that they've been pretty popular. And check out our entire interview. The name for the segment is still to be determined.
To be determined.
So any ideas out there, would really appreciate it. But with that, Joey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm pretty stoked off of our last episode.
Yeah, how'd you like seeing yourself on YouTube? And
that was a little weird, but besides that, it's like the message has to get out there.
No, and it was fun.
mean, also, I think we were talking before, we're just a couple of working class stooges,
Yes.
and this is how we see things. Like, I haven't really been in academia or anything like that, but you can see that some stuff is wrong, like war and poverty, and you can begin to point the finger in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like part of being class conscious, right, it's knowing that you're being exploited.
Yeah.
And it's saying something about it and kind of bringing it up and things like that. And also, same with like anti-imperialism, right? Like we see issues that are going on in the world because for whatever happens here in the U.S., right, the U.S. is doing that abroad 10 times worse, right? Yeah. So with that, with that sort of footnote, let's go ahead and just jump into today's topic. Matter of fact, our last episode was more class conscious based. Today we're going to be hitting a little bit of anti-imperialism. So Joe, you can go ahead and get us started with the quick summary.
Sure. So I think we kind of talked about the episode's going to be about how the U.S. is doing imperialism abroad right now and some of the different techniques that they're using and why. It's like a lot of it is missed about why they're doing it, because remember, it was Operation Iraqi Freedom. It was about democracy and freedom and stuff, but we know that it was really about oil and weapons contracts and stuff. Yeah. And these real material, tangible things, not so much the idealistic stuff that they pump us with. And so some of the ways that they do that, just a broad overview maybe would be, there's like hard, boots on the ground warfare, like Iraq, Afghanistan kind of stuff. Then you get into proxy wars, so it's like they're paying right-wing groups to infiltrate the country, and that's more like what we see in Syria and Libya and now Ukraine and stuff like this. And you get into more of like soft coups kind of stuff, like government non-GOs pay for political campaigns of far-right figures in other countries like Jair Bolsonaro and stuff like that, and these seedy kind of like CIA adjacent organizations will pay tons of money to these groups, and on from there to manipulating social media and stuff like this, and and then of course we can't forget sanctions. So it's like,
and this goes far beyond just people we are or have been in war with, right? Like this is beyond who we're bombing per se.
Yeah,
right? It's crude, but that's pretty straightforward. I mean, with everything, all the involvement the U.S. has in the South America, for example, right, or even closer, right, things like Cuba, things like embargoes and sanctions and things like that. People have to understand that yes, per se, we don't have boots on the ground in Cuba, right? Yeah. But we are fucking with them.
Oh yeah, big time.
And like that goes for like Venezuela. That goes for like a lot of the socialist experiments that have been in the South, right? And it's a joke that I hear a lot, but it's like, it's funny that the U.S. says that the socialist experiment never works, but they're the reason.
Yeah.
Then it never works.
Yeah. Right? It's like, if it's going to fail, why don't you just let it fail? Why do you got to starve the people and pay for all these right-wing groups to come in and kill people,
Yeah, it's, like we said, it goes beyond what we see on the news every day. And unfortunately, I feel like we do get a little apathetic sometimes as a society, because it's like, well, fuck, I know there's another third world country, another quote-unquote banana republic that's having a strife, or like, oh no, Russia bombed their own. What was it? The pipeline. Their
Oh,
own
geez, yeah.
pipeline. So like things like that, right? Like things that are almost obvious that it's U.S. involvement,
Yeah.
but we refused sort of to acknowledge it. Or even if when we do acknowledge it, it's kind of like, well,
Yeah.
that's just the U.S. That's how you stay on top.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of like a Machiavellian. And a lot of people in the States, I think, do believe that, like, you can have purification through violence. You know,
Right.
like, yeah, sure, 1 million people were killed in Iraq, but, you know, ultimately it was good.
Yeah.
And you hear that a lot from people in the States. And that's just like conditioning,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, well, it's part of the little, not little, but it's part of that, like, initial propaganda, right?
Yeah.
Like, the fact that, like, to be number one, right? Or, like, the freedom isn't free, that we gets thrown a lot. Or, like, to be number one, you kind of have to stay on top. And all these things that we get fed up on to sort of justify the behavior that we have towards others.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you're in, what's a good example? Like, let's say you're in elementary school and you happen to be really good friends with the bully, right? Or the
Yeah.
bully of the school is your bigger brother. Like, are you really gonna say something if you're the one benefiting from everything that happens?
Yeah.
I mean, and quotations benefiting, right? Because shit's still really shitty here in the U.S.
Yeah.
But you look upon the other countries, and especially third world countries or people we take advantage of, and it's like, well, I don't want to be that. So why would I speak up if I got it pretty good up
Yeah.
here? You know what I mean?
And you can see with that UN vote
Yeah.
that just recently happened. I don't know if we want to go into that.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, Israel and the U.S. are the only ones that voted to
Yeah.
keep blockades. So,
And
not
that's
surprising.
something that was like for 30 years in a row.
Yeah.
They've like the UN has pretty much unanimously voted for and asked the U.S. please stop blockading, you know, Cuba, and the only two people to support it, or the two countries to support it, U.S. and Israel. You know.
Well,
like-
Israel's again more of a puppet than anything else, right? They're just
Yeah.
like, well, if Big Bro's gonna
Yeah.
vote for it.
A
you vote
U.S.
no.
foothold in the Middle East.
Exactly.
kinda
Not to
thing.
say that they're the only ones, right? But
Yeah.
but they're clearly very obvious about it. But yeah, I mean, okay, so that's a kind of a good rabbit hole to sort of go under, right?
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about, well, I don't know that we mentioned it by name, right? But like socialism. Socialism has a bit of a negative connotation here in the U.S., right? Very linked to communism, as it should be, but also as like this McCarthyism idea of like, well, you must be a spy, you must be like infiltrating the U.S. to do it bad, to see its downfall, right?
Yeah.
And to this day, I feel like a lot of people still have that sort of mentality.
Yeah.
So when they think Cuba, communist, they sort of justify the blockade, even if, because a lot of people don't know about it, but they'll say, well, okay, we're holding resources from them, but they deserve it because Fidel Castro, right?
Yeah, or just because they're communists, because they're
because,
socialists.
yeah.
And I don't think anybody really knows what that means when they're
Right.
first. You get kind of really dig. I mean, we're still trying to figure out what
We're
it is.
still trying to figure out.
And-
As someone that myself considers themselves in the Communist Party, I would say, damn it, what is it really? What is it narrowed down to, right?
Yeah, like what does it mean? And it's different for each region too, because it's
Yeah.
like, what did it mean for Cuba? It meant that the people were in control of the land, the resources that were being exploited mostly by U.S. companies, you
Yeah.
know, sugar and rum and stuff like that. And like the revolution happened because the people wanted control of those resources, you know, and they didn't want the U.S. brothels and the U.S., you know,
Yeah, well, all the shitty things
casinos
that come
and
with
shit,
it, right?
yeah.
Like the capitalist side of it, right?
Yeah.
And you hear a lot of times, especially from pictures, right? Like, what's it called? People that visit, they'll do the tourism around Cuba just to sort of make it look bad. It's always like, well, look at them. The houses are falling apart. It's like, look at their cars. They're so old because they can't get new ones. It's like, yeah, but they also lead in like the amount of doctors they have per capita.
Yeah.
They also lead in education in some senses, especially compared to the U.S. They also lead with like social satisfaction as far as like time with their family and being able to pursue things that they like. You know, I feel like the idea of success has been so clouded by this suits and a Lamborghini and money and the biggest box to live in that we don't realize that, like, is that really what success should be?
Yeah.
Right? And like, hey, listen, man, like, maybe spending more time with your family, maybe pursuing careers, or not even careers, but just arts and interests that you truly like. Maybe working less.
Yeah.
You know, maybe those are the things that we should be pursuing as opposed to a more expensive watch, or you know. And again, that sounds almost pandering, because I get it. We hear a lot of this growing up, but I mean, I mean, it's funny, but a lot of times when you hear people with money, they'll be like, "I'm still not happy." Like, how is that not a sign that chasing something so subjective like
Yeah.
money, isn't
Yeah.
it? You know.
And that's why Che was kind of into like the new man kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Like he like was thinking that, okay, we're all, because it's all material and it's all a dialectical relationship, we are who we are because of our like habitat that's created. And if capitalism creates this habitat like it did in Cuba, like with the Batista regime that was the US supported,
Yeah.
who could they be or who should they be? You know, it's that kind of stuff. Like, let's create a new work ethic. Let's create a new kind of persona that we have, because we're all here like in the middle of capitalism, and it's like we're all depressed and
We're
you
still,
know,
it's not working.
it's not working.
People love to throw the like, what is it, 100 million people have died under communism, right? Like, well, that's a figurative number, and I feel like I hear all sorts of different numbers, but people don't realize how many people have died under capitalism just for not having healthcare itself. Not
Yeah.
to mention starvation, not to mention
Oh, yeah.
bad nutrition, not to mention motor-driven vehicles. Because I mean, having what's it called, neighborhoods that are specifically just for cars and not walking, right? It really limits your possibilities, and that's all under the umbrella of capitalism.
Yeah.
Right?
And how many people just hate their lives and hate their
Jesus,
jobs and
yeah.
just drive home drunk and like, you know.
Yeah, it's like I'm the meme guy, but like that SpongeBob meme when it's the guy that just like, he's going to work, he's at work, then he's at home, he's at work, he's at, you know, it's just like a cycle, you know, and it's like, oh, it's adulthood. It's like, no, man, that's capitalism.
Yeah. And
that's really what it is.
another good way that I always tell people is, and I got this from Vijay Prashad, one of my favorites, is that like you have the 1950s and you have China that goes communist, and you have India that goes capitalist. They get independence
Right.
from England and stuff after World War II, and they both diverge in these two different directions. And look at the two countries.
Yeah.
You know, China, no homelessness, high-speed rail, higher health outcomes, like alleviation of extreme poverty. And then you have India that has all these issues, you know. And you can just see, like, and we in the U.S. are saying that that's bad, you know. It's such a
Well, it's also
asinine
promise, right? That promise of like bootstraps, right? Pick yourself up for your bootstraps, because it's always peddled to the individual. It's your fault that you are the way you are. It's your fault that you are in the position that you are, right? Or it's your parents' fault that they have you in the position that you are, and the only person that can change that is yourself. And listen, I understand ambition, I understand being driven and things like that, but we have to understand that there's other things that are not contributing or are contributing against you, right?
Definitely.
And that goes as far as like having the proper education or having an education, which I feel like a lot of people in the U.S. might take it for granted. Like, right, a lot of times you grow up hearing like, fuck, I have to go to school until I'm 18, right? Like, otherwise you get stopped in the street and stuff like that. I did a couple times, matter of fact. I got told to go to school, and I was like, oh, why, right? But like, we definitely take education for granted, and wish we had, you know, higher learning as well. But some countries don't even have your rudimentary 12 years of education, you know.
Yeah.
So with that, there's a lot of things we take for granted, but that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. I feel like that's another thing. We'll have a lot, right, where people are like, well, dude, if you don't like it, then just leave. It's like, listen, man, because I like the Americans around me is why I want things to be better.
Yeah.
Because I know we can be better. Right?
Is there pain out there in the street, and is there suffering? Like, then it's like there's still work to be done.
It's always going to be. That's another thing. There's always going to be work to be done, right? Like, people think that because we learn about history, we did it, we made it, we're here, and this is like. But think 10 years ago, we thought we were there, yeah? And 20 years before that. And then like, we keep seeing improvements. So people have to understand that, like, no, we're living through history, so we have to progressively change.
Yeah.
Or better ourselves,
a cool-ass thing is, I heard, which was, like, Allende in Chile,
Yeah.
when they were doing their socialist experiment, they had this. They were trying to develop computer programs
Right.
that would organize society
Oh wow.
and be able to like meet supply instantly and
Yeah.
just like with algorithms and stuff. And that's exactly what Amazon and all these companies,
Yeah.
what they've created is the
The
technology
algorithm
we would need
of
to
needs.
have a pure kind of like
Yeah.
socialist society in the future where like things are sent
But with the price
Yeah.
tag, right? Like,
without the price tag.
right,
Yeah.
right. Well, that goes as far as like things like the GPS, right? Like that's government funded information and research that
Oh,
was
yeah.
used for navigation. It was used for location. It was research funded by the U.S. to make accessibility better, right?
Yeah.
For all sorts of technology. And then what happened? It got sold, or like the idea of it, the use of it got sold to companies that now put it in a phone and then sell it right back to you. So you
Yeah.
paid for it once and then you pay for it again every
God.
time you buy it. And that's the internet. I mean, that's GPS. And then you're like,
Even shipping containers and
Shipping
shit like
containers.
that, you know.
and there's so many things that we get peddled right back to us for a price.
Yeah.
Right. So it's funny that people think that like socialism doesn't create innovation. But
It's created all the innovation.
yeah, what innovation you want? 7 different kinds of Coca-Cola? Like, is that really
Yeah.
what we need? Right?
Well, yeah, it's like, and you see it now with like services. It's like you used to be able to get a service for a certain price,
Yeah.
but then slowly they turn that service into that's the platinum, and we're going to give you the shittier versions. Of,
Transactions,
yeah.
right? Like you
Yeah.
see it even in video games now, like where the video game itself will be free,
yeah,
but then they'll sell you and they'll peddle you a shirt or a
the
this and a
DLC
that and, a
and
this.
shit.
And listen, I've done it.
Yeah.
I'll say I've done it. Like I've paid for it. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm like, it's $1.99. I mean,
Oh, of
how
course.
cool would it look, right?
Yeah.
So we all do it, but it goes beyond like those sort of things. I mean, it goes to like we were talking before. You try to have a software for editing a video,
Yeah.
and now you need this and the that and the this, or like Canva. My girlfriend and I for the podcast use Canva a lot
Yeah.
for pictures and stuff like that, and posters. And every time she'll be like, "Oh, it's $2." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Damn it! Like, why can't we just have it?" Like, I mean, I'm using the program, but
Yeah.
it's the little microtransactions.
And it's like whatever fucking designer did this for Canva. Do you think they got paid the
God,
amount of money
no.
that they're gonna?
God, no.
You know.
And it's funny because, yeah, exactly. They're getting all the profit. Like
Yeah.
whoever designed it, they just threw it in there. It was just part of like the big umbrella of the duties they have to do.
Yeah.
And that's really all it is. Like they just put a price tag behind everything. It's not necessarily that it's better. It's just an extra. But I think what were we talking about?
We're getting off topic.
Yeah,
No, it's all good though because
So no, but back to the algorithm we were talking about as far as like Amazon, right?
Amazon
Taking advantage of the algorithm. With Chile, that's a perfect example of capitalism working, right? Like it's the free market or whatever you want to call it. It's just taking advantage of whether it's overseas workers or the people we have here or resources. I mean, just the fact, like, think of Shark Tank. How crazy is that show that someone can come up with some really good products, like really innovative, great products, but for being petty or because you didn't choose the right investor, you're fucked. And maybe you're blacklisted and maybe that product will never go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, that's not innovation, man. That's pettiness. That's greed. That's all it really is. It's like, oh, you don't want to give me 50% of your company for whatever money? Well, then you're done. You'll never be anything in this life. You know, it's like, whoa, dude.
Yeah, supplicate yourself before the masters.
Exactly.
You know, like,
and like, how sad is that show? It's just a bunch of rich people and people that are innovative. The people that actually came up with the ideas are the ones that have to plea to the people that just have money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy when you really break it down. It's like, what is your talent? You have money. And a lot of those times, those people didn't earn that money. Right?
Yeah.
It's whether it's a small loan of $1 million or whatever. It's usually generational. And even if it isn't, let's say you do strike it big. That's it. You're done working at like 30 years old because you have money. Like, that's, yeah.
Yeah. And are our accomplishments even individual?
Yeah.
Like, no, everything is shared. Like, every single piece of us comes from this earth and this world, you know, and we're all human. And it's like nobody invented the airplane. There was like millions and
Millions.
millions of technological advancements back to the very beginning that
lead.
led to it.
Yeah.
So even patents are like
Right.
insane in that way. Like, you know, of course there are geniuses and people who make great advancements, but I think it's a little out of hand.
It's all
with
cumulative,
the,
right?
With the money
Like
stuff.
it's when people say things like, yeah, people say things like self-made millionaire, right, or billionaire. I feel like I hear that
Yeah.
a lot lately. And it's like, well, are you self-made, man? Because like I'm pretty sure the business you're in has been there before,
Yeah.
right?
And it's like,
yeah.
you had the bright idea to invest in a weapons company and then tell your buddy in Congress
Yeah.
that we need to go into this place. Like,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
what a great idea.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. And again, that's all sort of the backside. I feel like we are jumping back and forth in between like anti-imperialism and anti-capitalism, but unfortunately,
Yeah.
capitalism drives imperialism, right?
yeah.
Like, listen, the U.S. isn't in third world countries or in the Middle East because for shits and giggles, I guess is the best way I could say it. They're not there for fun. They're not there just because they like war. They're there for corporate interests, because if they bomb this country or they take the resources from this other one, then their profits will go up. And
Yeah.
you're thinking, well, why does the U.S. care about that? Because there's this thing called legal corruption or lobbying, right? Like,
Yeah.
that allows corporations to pay senators and congressmen and Supreme Courts and everybody pretty much in politics to sort of lean their vote one way or another.
Yeah. And they're part of the same class. It's like,
Yeah.
even if, like, we'll say Jim owns you know, a processing plant that uses rare earth minerals, like he's still going to the country club, and his kids are intermarried with the dude who, you know, wants to own the mine, you know, the Canadian mining conglomerate or whatever. It's like they're all hanging out. Like, their interests are the same, and they have class consciousness.
Oh,
you
for
know?
sure. Yeah, because they know they know that if they didn't stick together, they'd get eaten alive. I mean, they're outnumbered. I mean, a great example of it would be like, what is it, Bugs movie? Right?
Wait, what is that?
Is it Bugs or what's the Pixar one? The one with the ants. It's not. There's two of them. There's Bugs and Ants. I
Oh,
think it's
Ants.
Bugs Life. Bugs Life.
Oh, Bug's Life.
Bugs
Yeah.
Life. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's like, why did the crickets do what they did? Not necessarily because they wanted the food. They had to subdue the ants. And I'm butchering the metaphor here, but it's just, listen, we're bigger in number, right? But unfortunately, we're looking down, and until we have class consciousness the same way that the 1% does, we won't be able to make any change. And you see this in things like unionizing, right? You see this in things like strikes. You see this all over the world, right? Imagine a McDonald's just stops working in a neighborhood. They would lose so much money in one day, right?
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that they need us more than we need them.
Yeah.
Right? They have the money. They create the jobs. It's like, no, we fill the jobs, and that's 10 times more important than anything else they could possibly do.
Like during coronavirus, when it was what were the workers called? That
frontline workers.
They were like important. They couldn't.
Yeah, they care now.
They were too important that they couldn't not. And then you realize, like, oh, it's not the investment bankers or like the
Shady
Miati ownership dealership
dealerships and stuff. Yeah,
like, they don't run society. It's the grocery store workers and the food workers, because you know that they're what's actually doing the meaningful work in society.
They're the ones that if they were to stop, fucking everything would collapse.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like the stock market can go on. I mean, you know, and it's again, it's this idea behind our productivity connected to our worth as a person, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people were like, well, I don't want to work in McDonald's for the rest of my life. And it's like, listen, why is it that you don't want to work at McDonald's? Is it because people are telling you that it's a shitty job? Or is it because you physically don't want to do it? Because if you don't want to do it, fine, then don't do it. You know, find something else. I'm sure you'll find something you're very good at. But if your only reason that you don't want to do a certain job is because I've known people that have certain jobs and I'm like, well, I can't stay here because you know, I have to move on. Like, I have to grow up. And it's like, why, man? You love your job. Yeah. And if it's paying you the bills, you know.
I worked in a kitchen. It was sick.
Yeah, man. Like, there's jobs I've had where I'm just like, this is a cool job. I just wish they paid more. Unfortunately, they don't. and sometimes we are forced, to leave certain jobs.
Yeah, I mean, if the movie theater paid more, I'd
Oh,
probably
man,
still be there.
I'll work at a movie theater one day, man. That'd be such a cool job. I
Yeah.
feel like. I mean, in theory, I'm sure people would be like, like I hate popcorn now.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I worked at a Starbucks for a bit, and I hated going home smelling like milk.
Oh yeah.
Just because everybody would drop it, it would go on your fucking apron. But I do love coffee a lot more because of it. And funny enough, I stopped drinking Starbucks because I'm like, oh, there's all this other stuff.
Yeah.
You really get to appreciate it. But I mean, that's a whole different thing. But
Yeah.
anyway, back to anti-imperialism. So
Yes.
with that, I will ask you, what do you think is going to happen in Brazil? Because there's now been elected a left-leaning president. And are we going to be seeing boots on the ground pretty soon? Are we getting freedom in Brazil?
Well,
Sponsored by the U.S.?
Yeah, I don't know. Lula da Silva.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because there's this whole unity system that's happening that's like against the West.
Yeah. And
it's going to be Lula da Silva, Nicaragua, and also Colombia just got a leftist president. And they renewed their ties with Venezuela, so they're going to reopen their border and kind of stamp out the narco trafficker problem that's been going on along the border. Another thing that the U.S. does, supports all these right-wing, essentially terrorist groups, and surrounds all the enemy countries, And what's an enemy country? A country that wants to control their own resources. That's what earns you on the enemy list, So what's going to happen in Brazil? I don't know, but
yeah, I mean,
Lula itself is a good step.
Yeah, I was going to say a perfect example of it is like watching Narcos. I don't know if you ever did, but like the fact that they have a CIA agent, right, that's supporting coups in the South America. You're like, man, they're just saying this shit out loud. Like, it's been confirmed of like CIA involvement with like crack cocaine in the U.S.
Oh yeah,
and in South America, right? Like the growing
the
poppies,
Contras,
cocaine and stuff like that, and distributing to fund all the coups that happen. Bringing weapons, right? What's our number one exportation from the U.S.? It's weapons, and it's not just legal ones; it's also the illegal ones, right?
Yeah.
So it just goes to show that this is not just a problem. I'm sorry, it is a problem, but it's so normalized. It's so like, oh, that's just the way it is,
And it's like, what do these right-wing groups get in return for their service? So like the U.S. will like provide them with kill lists and stuff, and they go after trade unions, communists, any kind of like organizer and agitators. They go in and they kill them, and in return for that service, they're armed and trained by the U.S., but they also get to deal in a little narco trafficking,
or start dictatorships, or or run amok in their countries, and just kind of, and then you get a Batista situation, right, where everything goes crazy and the people they need a revolution. And it's interesting because the CIA or the US is also it pushes it so far that it backfires like almost every time.
Oh yeah,
right. And we see it
blowback,
right? Blowback, and we see it whether it's in like Korea or Vietnam.
Oh, there's the best. Like, do you know Jake Sullivan?
Yeah, I know that.
My God.
Yeah, it's a good podcast.
Or no, the Jake Sullivan, the guy, he's a foreign policy advisor. He was for Obama and he is for Biden. And when all those emails got leaked to WikiLeaks,
right,
he had an email where he said, AQ, which is Al Qaeda, is on our side in Syria.
Yeah.
So that's that blowback. Is like, okay, now
I thought you were quoting. Sorry, there's a different Jake, not Sullivan. Now that I'm thinking about it, that has a podcast called Blowback. It talks about the. Sorry.
No.
But okay, so
Jake Sullivan is evil.
Okay. No, my guy was. Was nicer than that. Let me. So Jake Sullivan worked for Obama. Now working for Biden.
Worked for Obama. Worked under Hillary Clinton as Secretary of Defense. Yeah. And they cooked up the Libya thing, and they had to fly in.
Well, I mean, Al-Qaeda was what was the name of the group before they were Al-Qaeda?
Okay.
that were
Was that Mujahideen?
yeah, right, and
Yeah.
they were on our side,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
what was the Bush area,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Or at the end of Rambo.
Yeah, Jesus.
At the end of Rambo, there's
Yeah.
that to the brave fighters of the Mujahideen.
yeah, and I wonder if they ever took that out.
And
out of
that's
those movies.
even funny because why did they pay the Mujahideen to go into Afghanistan? It's because there was a socialist uprising in Afghanistan, and they had been calling for years for the Soviet Union to help them because the U.S. had sent all these Mujahideen into the countryside, and they were murdering literacy program like
burning.
students and stuff that were going out into the countryside, and that, not to get crazy off topic, but some of those Mujahideen fighters, they spread out.
Well, they're trained.
They
right?
brought
they're American trained with American resources.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna do someone else's bidding, man. I mean, that's how warlords start. I mean, we as the U.S. machine, right? Like they'll trample along whatever the hell they have to, and they'll get the U.S. on that side until again it blows back.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, no, we hate them, right? And like they were always the enemy.
Yeah.
Very
and
like
isn't that
Orwellian,
just so capitalist? It's like create the problem and then you fix it. Like create it, fix it. Like hey, we need to spend all this money on weapons to fight these groups abroad that kind of we created, but we're not going to say that.
Another great example is that we sell weapons to both sides.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So now you have Dick Cheney's America. Now you have like this insane amount of weapons circulating the world. And trust me, I'm pretty sure that, 5 out of 10 weapons or bullets that are being shot are ours, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what side, doesn't matter where it's going, who it's hurting, it's us.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we don't pick sides. We don't care about sides, man. The U.S. cares if it makes a profit, right? Because they think they'll never see it here in the U.S. They think it'll never be here. Or maybe they don't even care about that because they're already on their way out. It's like, oh, that's someone else's problem.
And if it's chaos in the region, more the better.
Yeah.
Because, now
they need us for aid.
That. Yeah.
Now they need us for, let's send our Green Berets. Now they're going to establish connections there. Now they're going to be helping with dentists, and then we're going to give them a couple of doctors. We're going to build a school. So then when we need them to attack someone else, they'll have to say yes. Or if we need them to hide weapons, or if they need them to this and that, they have to say yes. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, they're holding them hostage with resources.
Yeah.
And that happens also with South America, right? Like they'll sort of dip their fingers on oh, you guys want a little bit of aid, you want this and that, great, don't support Cuba. And I don't know, where it was okay, now let's do a coup on your current president.
Yeah.
And it's holy shit, it's just, I don't know.
And this gets into the IMF and the World Bank stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's okay, you want bridges, you want trains and stuff like that. Well, guess what? You're gonna have to play ball with us.
Oh, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, or else we're not gonna give you that money, and we're still gonna export all your resources. Take
advantage of them, man. Yeah, it's also okay. So to bring it back sort of to the U.S. in itself, right?
Yeah.
How is the modern American? How are we being affected on a day by day? Because there is going to be people that are cynical, but well, I'm not there, I'm here. That doesn't affect me, right?
Yeah.
And a great example of it is inflation, right? Or inflation, I guess is the best way to describe it. The fact that resources that we need are being upscaled, not necessarily because they cost more to make or bring or anything like that, but because they can use sort of the noise that's going on around the U.S. for corporations to be cool, we can justify this jump of 10 cents on this and $1 on that because we could always blame it on XYZ.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of where we are right now, where we find ourselves for gas and we find ourselves for basic needs. It's not necessarily because things are more expensive everywhere else. It's just because corporations are able to take advantage of everybody else, pretty much.
Yeah, well, inflation is they're making their money back from COVID.
Oh, yeah. Not to mention that they broke records in COVID. Amazon, doubled their money in 2020.
If it's supply and demand, don't you think that there should be a super supply of gas after COVID because nobody was driving? So the price should have been way low, but Now we
That's
have
not the
record
case.
high prices. Like, what the
Yeah.
hell?
And they're
Clearly,
also-
it's broken.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to like greed, right? Capitalism, right? And like people are like, oh, they're just evil, and it's like, yeah, man, they're shitty people, but they're also just taking advantage of a system that's in their favor, right? To them, they wake up and they're like, how am I gonna? They don't think how am I gonna exploit someone today? They think how am I gonna make $1? Why? And then with that comes exploitation. That comes depleting resources from other countries, right? That even comes from like taking jobs of Americans and taking them overseas, right? We hear that a lot, and people don't realize that it's just happening more and more, especially with things like automation and working from home and things like that. The reason that they want you back in the office isn't necessarily because they want the community. It's because then managers don't have a job, right? Managers need to have a flock in front of them, otherwise they can't press their finger at you and things like that.
And people are saying, well, if part of my surplus value that I create goes into paying the rent and turning the lights on, and now that physical location
isn't there,
why
am I gonna get
why didn't I get a raise?
Exactly.
You know, like
exactly. Somehow it only affects us when it's the other way, right? It's like we're gonna have to make some cuts.
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's always like, oh, we're having hard times. We're gonna have to, and then like the people's paychecks are always some of the first to get cut, or people in itself are so expandable that it's like, all right, now we're gonna cut this entire department out, but like the CEO is still making the same profits they were the year before, and somehow the board is really happy, but it's always expendable things, which is people and supplies, I guess.
And that's like by design, because there's so many jobs that need to get done,
right?
You know, like with infrastructure and with all this kind of stuff. But there's no will to do it. Like they have an extreme surplus of us by design because you know it drives wages down.
But if they and it's funny because if they skimp on the jobs, right, then they have to make people beg for them, pretty much. Like you have so many people out of college, they're like, I can't find a job. They're asking for so many things, like it's almost ridiculous the amount of experience, but also education that they're asking from you, right? And they also want you to be young, so it's like it's a paradox, right?
Yeah.
But then you have these companies that, because they applied for loans during COVID, they say that they need workers, but don't actually, right? Just to make it seem like they tried, and they try to make their their company move forward and things like to justify why they needed those loans, but it's not working. And sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like there's so many jobs, like you mentioned, that need to be filled, but they won't give them away because then they're giving too much power to the work. I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's where I'm trying to land.
It's an obedience thing.
Exactly.
It's like they have to do certain things from their perspective of their class, because otherwise they're going to get in trouble with their buddies. You know, if it's like a landlord is like, hey, don't worry about rent this month, you know, the renter is going to take that information to their next place, and they're going to be like, hey, my old landlord, gave me a break. And they're like, what was his name? You know, we're going to have a talk with him.
Why is he doing that?
Why is he doing that? Like, they have to, chastise us.
Keep themselves in check. Yeah, and this isn't to justify the shitty behavior, because a lot of people will say, well, they're just playing ball, right? And a good example of this is like things like servers. So there's a big argument, right? Like, how much do you tip a server? Like, should we even be tipping servers? Like, is it justified? Is it proper? And I always get flack for this, because when I say that tips are like immoral, I don't necessarily mean like giving a tip, because I always give the 15 to 20% mandatory, right? But what I think is like the fight shouldn't be between the tipper and the employee, right? The patron and the employee. It should be the employer. Like, they're the ones fucking you over. They're the ones giving you $3 an hour plus tips and making it, selling to you like it's some kind of like achievement, and it's up to you and your performance on how you do. We all know, we've all tipped, we haven't all been servers, but we've all tipped, and we've all seen it around us to know that just someone's performance isn't enough for them to get a tip, right? You can be the best server in the world, and you still don't get a tip or get a 5% tip, right? And it's like, fuck, that's shitty. But that's just proof that the system is fucked up. Like, when I complain about tipping, I don't necessarily complain about helping fellow worker out. Isn't
Yeah.
It's just that, like, man, why is your... Trust me, they have it in their budget to pay you. They just don't.
Yeah.
And that's the shitty thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that power dynamic.
Yeah, and it's very like American kind of style to miss the key factor.
Yeah.
Like, the immigrants are taking my jobs because they're undercutting the labor. You know.
Yeah.
We got some watchers here.
Very good. Hey. I mean, we are in the bookstore. I'm not surprised. Yeah, you're good.
But yeah, and it's like, no, the fucking employer is undercutting your labor by exploiting this other person.
Yeah.
Like, why look at the person who's being exploited as the issue?
Right.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, or they'll blame everybody except for the actual problem.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they'll be like, well, we just had a slow night and not very big tippers, or we just had like a slow day at the pizza parlor and no one, you know,
Yeah.
not a whole lot of payment. But it's just, again, it goes into this power dynamic of like keeping people in check, right? Because if you give them too much, then they'll know their worth, and if they know
Yeah.
their worth, they won't do all the shitty things that people
Yeah.
ask them to do.
And also, I think it's important to, like, you know, like, say that, like, small businesses, this is a small business.
Yeah.
My sister has a small business. Like, those aren't the problem. We
Right.
could deal with those after the revolution.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's the big fish. You know, it's the mining conglomerates. It's the freaking tech companies. It's the oil companies. Like, and, you know, our phone services and our internet providers and stuff.
Yeah.
These big companies that are really
Those are far beyond reach.
far beyond reach.
That's
like,
one thing that happens a lot when, like, the idea of like socialism comes up. It's like, well, what about the businesses? I'm like, listen, man, no one wants to take down your I was gonna say Blockbuster, but that's not even a business. No one wants to take down your Little Caesars, man. Like, because a lot of those may be franchises. Like, listen, no one's coming after your Little Caesars. We're talking Amazon, and not even Amazon warehouse. We're talking HQ, man. I mean, we're talking big boys. We're talking the ones that could fix world hunger in a day. Like, that's the issue.
Yeah,
that's the bourgeois. Because a lot of people have a business, and I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the people that might own like an HVAC company, right?
Yeah.
And they hear something like socialism, like, well, I worked hard for my money. I'm not gonna give it to someone that isn't working hard. Leave my money alone, right? When we say tax the rich, it's like, leave my money. I'm like, dude, trust me. No one's talking about your 100K a year. Like, that's great and all, but no one's talking about you. We're talking about like billionaires. We're talking about the 1% of the 1% that, like I said, could do monstrous amount of help with their money.
Yeah.
Right? With a quarter of their money, right? Like, it's insane. It's insane what they could do, and that's really who we're after. Well, maybe at first, but like, that's really who the grief we have against, right? It's like the idea of like, yes, billionaires shouldn't exist, but then neither should homeless people. Like, they should be a homeostasis. That's really where we're at.
And it's like that, like Elon Musk said when they did the coup in Bolivia.
Yeah.
He tweeted, we can coup whoever we want.
Jesus,
because they're the biggest lithium mine.
He's got to stay in his lane. I mean, the perfect example of like Get Up, I don't know if you, or Don't Look Up, I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yeah, I saw that.
So the idea behind it is that like the tech billionaire or trillionaire, whatever, he's going to let a rocket fall on Earth because it's full of minerals like lithium and things to produce phones and things like that.
Yeah.
And you look at that and you're like, oh, that's stupid. That would never happen. And it's like, dude, we fucking bomb countries for their lithium and stuff like that. And we have idiots tweeting, you know, we can coup anybody. Why? Because it's known. Like, it's known. Like, we do this for money. Why? Because they're like, well, we have to stop depending on China.
Yeah.
Like, why do we have to stop depending on China again?
And that's one thing, too, is that when you begin to pick up on like global perspectives, we are in the we're in the woods.
Yeah.
You know, we're like what we're raised with, you know. And there was a recent thing that came out that said 2/3 of the world, this was like a Cambridge University thing that they did, survey or something. And 2/3 of the world are now against the U.S. and Western hegemony and now siding with Russia and China. And why is that? Well, it's because the U.S. has fucked with their countries so much and ruined all their, potential for years and years and years.
It's a ticking time bomb, man.
Yeah.
It's just that like the U.S. has had the benefit of not having had any major wars within the last 100 years that have destabilized the economy like they have in the Middle East or in South America and things like that, or even like Eastern Europe. So we haven't had that, right? And we haven't had. I mean, we're surrounded by Canada and Mexico, which don't really do have much of a threat to us because of the size of the military that we have.
Yeah.
So we have all these sort of we're in a bubble, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like we're in such a bubble, and we do all these things from kind of remotely that they seem untouchable and they think they're untouchable, but that shit's all bound to fail. Like it's a ticking time bomb, and when shit hits the fan, shit's gonna hit the fan.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we might have people that are gonna be so nationalistic that they're gonna be like, I'm gonna go down with them, and gonna go to war for a country that could care less about them.
Yeah.
But it's rough. It's rough. And again, I guess if we had to summarize this entire rabbit hole of a episode, imperialism equals capitalism, right? Like the shit we do outside of the U.S., all the shitty things we do are driven by greed and a way to make a buck, pretty much.
Yeah. Control over resources.
Yeah.
Control over industry. And also the other important part is that like the elites of the West also need to suppress the productivity of all these countries abroad. Like the first thing England did when they colonized India was destroy their textile manufacturing, because England's textiles was on the rise and they wanted to become a global provider. Yeah. So they had to destroy the existing textile manufacturing that was in India to take over the market. And so after World War II, when the rest of the world was all destroyed, like it was U.S. dominance, and now the project has been to maintain the dominance, and you do that by taking each of these countries down a peg. Yeah.
Not letting them prosper.
Don't let them prosper.
We might be at a 10, and they're striving for a 3.
Yeah.
We could not let them get to a 5. Like, that just cannot happen, right? Because, consequently, they've seen it from a mile away. And listen, like, the U.S. is a pro at this. I mean, they know what the fuck they're doing. And that's part of the problem. They haven't had any consequences for so fucking long that they have this shit down to a science. Yeah. Whether it's coups, whether it's overthrowing a government, whether it's, like, infiltrating from afar, like, whatever it is, they have it down to a science, and it's just another day for them. And they have the resources, they have the boots on the ground. So that's why it's so scary, because it's not going to stop there, right? Like, what's to say that we have, let's say California, for some reason, starts going really leftist. Or let's say just like Oregon, right? Like, I don't think it would happen, but let's just say like they just
some
get like
scary parts of Oregon.
Yeah, I know. I think it's Portland and everything else is just gnarly now.
I drove through
let's say
time.
Colorado then. Yeah. I don't know, but let's say a state were to have like a super leftist mayor, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the U.S. would be like, and fucking intervene, because that shit ain't happening. And like, it will get to that point. There will be bloodshed in our own country, in our backyard, and there has been, right? Like,
well, that's what the prison system is.
Exactly.
It's like with the '94 crime bill and NAFTA at the same time. It was like, okay, with NAFTA, we're going to ship all the jobs overseas. We're going to destroy Mexico's economy. We're going to take over all the small farming operations. Those skilled workers are going to come north to work low wages. And what do we do with all that surplus labor here in the United States? That's where the prisons come in. Because the people aren't worth anything on this, unemployed or anything like that. But they are worth $40,000 inside the prison system, because a company has to feed them. A company has to provide their telecommunications and stuff.
Like legal slavery is what it is, right? Like, it's the closest thing they can do legally, right? Not to say that they don't do. I mean, they do pretty much have slavery, especially with like in a lot of the cultivations and like food distributions, the places like that. Like they'll employ illegal immigrants or undocumented people, and take advantage of them. I mean, these are people that are just looking for a chance. They're looking for work, and they're hard workers, but they get taken advantage of. And when shit hits the fan, they get disposed of. which can be another form of slavery, right? Because they're
Yeah.
probably getting paid pennies for what they're really worth or
Yeah.
what they're making.
Or like the firefighters.
Or the firefighters
Yeah.
with in the industrial complex. Sorry, and the prison complex.
Prison industrial complex.
Industrial complex, right? Like the fact that they do so much, especially here in California, when like we are gonna burn completely one day, and they wildland fire is what it's called. It's just the grueling work that they have to do, and just to be pretty much told that you can never do that again once you step out of prison. I mean, those are skills that take a while to learn, but it's a lot of hard work. I mean, it's crazy to think that those people can be rewarded just helping their community. You know what I mean? And it's insane, especially when like a lot of these people aren't violent criminals or anything like that.
Yeah, I had a homie who worked landscape with me, and he was like, he got in an accident, but he had actually stayed the night at his friend's house because he was drunk, and then in the morning drove and got in like a minor accident, and his friend who was in the passenger seat hurt his foot or something like that. And even though like he wasn't drunk, they still brought him up on charges and stuff.
Oh, because probably it's still in his blood, huh?
Still in his blood or something like that. And like during his court hearing or whatever, there was like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers was there, and also a visiting third grade class, and they fucking threw the book at him.
Yeah.
And he went to prison for 3 years, and he joined the
brigade.
The brigade. Yeah, and it's like, damn.
Yeah, it's really
That's
really
fucked.
shitty. And I mean, this is not uncommon. This is the thing. Like, you hear these stories, and it's a lot of people will say like, "Wow, you were very unlucky." It's like, it's more than just unlucky. That's what it is. And there's probably a higher percentage that you're gonna be thrown the buck than you're not, right? And this goes for any kind of. I mean, we make the example of like Coke versus crack, right? A very well known sort of example
rich
of like
people
versus poor people,
Yeah.
right? Like who gets more time. But that goes beyond that, right? Because they say it's a case to case basis, but we all know that there is sort of a blank statement of like, well, and they're not gonna say because that's illegal. But the moment you walk in and you're brought in, the judge and the jury the jury and the judge, the people that make the decisions, they have already made the decision in their head, right?
Yeah.
So, and there isn't any amount of sort of reform that's going to change that. Like, it's just the whole system's fucked, Like, how do you reform racism? Like, how do you reform an idea so ingrained in your head that could send someone for life on something that maybe they didn't even do?
Yeah. Or it's like, if weed became legal, how come the prisons didn't get emptied of all the people with weed charges? Know?
But there's so many people making a profit off of it, right?
Yeah.
It's just that the U.S. realized that they can make money, or not the U.S. because it's not legal federally, but like California realized how much money there is in the drug industry, and they realized, holy fuck, we want to cut.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. I mean, they didn't do it out of the kindness of their heart, right? And they didn't do it because they're fucking cool and hippies. They did it because they realized, think of how much tax money we're going to be getting. And that's exactly what's happening. I mean, think of how much money they're making every year off of legal marijuana.
Like fucking Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Top cop.
Yeah, top cop.
Who prosecuted all these people for weed while she was in charge.
So cool about it.
And now she says, her dad, I guess, is like a Marxist or something like that.
Oh, shit.
And I swear.
That's
and
hilarious.
So she said, everybody was smoking weed back in the day. I'm Jamaican. And her dad wrote a public letter and said, like, we do not take part in these like stereotypes and like we reject this statement.
Damn,
and
so
stuff.
they don't like their fucking daughter.
Yeah, they don't even like her. It's hilarious.
What a perfect example of how shitty a person is when your family disowns you.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Your family's like, dude, why are you engaging in these stereotypes to like get political clout?
Or like fucking what's his Yang, where he's like, Asians are good at math. And I'm like, dude, you're so desperate to get elected.
Yeah.
Though you'll say the dumbest fucking things.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. But anyway, to summarize,
Yeah.
Be anti-imperialist, I guess is the best way I could say it. Like, listen, there's nothing we can do meddling around other countries where we're helping. There just isn't. Even when there's aid to be given, we don't give it unless it comes with sort of a like, what's it called?
It's a backhanded compliment kind of thing.
Always.
It's like,
it's always like, we'll help, but or only if. always, every time. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's shitty, but it does affect us on a day to day. People have to realize that this sort of stuff, we are seeing the repercussions. I mean, go to a gas station. I mean, go anywhere you can, and this is all no one else's fault but the U.S. That's really what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
And I like to think of it, if we're summarizing that, like, the rest of the world is trying to break free.
They're
from
trying. They're
its,
trying.
You know, the out and out colonial oppression is more hidden now. And now we have neo-colonialism, in which, you know, you're in debt. You'll never be able to pay it off to the World Bank or the IMF, you know, and you're beholden to American corporations. They make you take, you know, they make you take deals with mining conglomerates and stuff like that to extract your resources. And the rest of the world cannot develop with this imperialist boot, you know, stepping on them, you know. And so I want the rest of the world to develop, and leftist people want the rest of the world to develop, and they can't do that with the threat of the bullet and the threat of the sanction and the threat of, you know, or debt and stuff like that.
I mean, there is no such thing as a poor country, just a country being depleted of their resources.
Right.
Right? They're rich in resources. They just, the distribution of wealth is completely fucked up, right?
Yeah.
So that's really what it comes down to. You know, when people think of like quote unquote banana republics, it's always like, well, they're just blank, right? Like racist statement.
Yeah.
they're just this, they're just that. They haven't tried hard enough. And it's like, no, man, like it's hard to fucking try hard when, again, you have that bullet to your head as a country, and you're like, there's nothing we can do. I mean, there's a lot of people in power in some countries where they're like, I rather feed my my constituents for a day, you know, because at least they'll have that, you know. We're trying to keep a culture alive, or we're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
But yeah, U.S. equals bad guy, man.
Where's the bad guys?
Joey, thank you so much. This is a lot of fun again. We're gonna be doing it. Hopefully, we'll have a couple more structure. We don't have much of a structure to the segment.
We're just shooting from the hip.
We're just shooting from the hip. But it's gonna be fun. I know that we're gonna be having some researched episodes pretty soon. We talked about that. It's gonna be a lot of fun, but a lot of it is gonna be very conversational. So shoot us a message if you guys have any questions, any topics you guys might be interested in. Joey, where can we find you?
You can find me at on Instagram, Reyes_rarities. We're located in Barrio Logan on Logan Avenue, across the street from Por Vida. Yeah. We sell books and antiques.
Hey man, come find a book, man. I mean, I don't know if anyone likes to read, but I love reading.
American Fascist.
There we go.
How about this one? The End of Policing.
No, seriously, come in, talk to Joey. I'll probably be hanging around here too. Grab a book. Is there a rec? Do you have a rec, a book rec that you're like excited about right now?
Well, I do have. They're not here, but I just picked up a nice load of books.
Okay. Cool.
I got a little. I'm a big sci-fi head, so I got some sci-fi books that I like, fantasy books that I like. Also, I got a little Marx, a little Engels, a little Lenin.
Yeah, I know what I'm coming for.
Yeah. Miss the sci-fi. Right in. Yeah.
Anyway, Joey, thank you so much. As always,
thank you, sir.
I'm David. You can find me at .ProVega or South of the 8 podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good day.
Take it easy.